Palestine is liberated, then they can have this conversation internally. But right now, Western forces are allowing the death and destruction of this people to continue.
What do you think the odds are that after this stops happening, that the Palestinians are going to get together and say that it's okay to be gay?
I don't know, because I can't even imagine a world where this death and destruction isn't constant.
Also, what does that matter to stopping the genocide? Again, it's like, well, okay, but like if they're not being genocided, are they gonna be like pro-queer? Asmongold, are you pro-queer? Are you well known for just being a strong ally to the LGBTQ plus community?
Here, it's just a mere talking point that a lot of people who defend Israel, not saying you do, but a lot of people who defend Israel try to repackage Israel's violence and contextualize it and make it seem more appropriate to an American audience that is sometimes pro-gay and pro-queer. It rarely ever works. A lot of queer people still don't give a shit. They're like, I don't care. Just stop killing these people is their attitude. So that's it. That's the reality of the matter, is that once Palestine is liberated, then they can have this conversation internally. But right now, Western forces are allowing the death and destruction of this people to continue.
What do you think the odds are that after this stops happening, that the Palestinians are going to get together and say that it's okay to be gay?
I don't know, because I can't even imagine a world where this death and destruction isn't constant.
Also, what does that matter to stopping the genocide? Again, it's like, well, okay, but like if they're not being genocided, are they gonna be like pro-queer? Asmongold, are you pro-queer? Are you well known for just being a strong ally to the LGBTQ plus community? Have you ever, in any of the like interactions you've had, say with like Nick Merckx, the FaZe Clan, stuff like that, have you ever been like, oh yeah, trans bad? Have you ever promoted those kind of ghouls and assholes online? Like, are you just 100%? Oh yeah, no, I'm super pro-queer, LGBTQ plus friendly. When you come to Asmongold's channel, you know you got an ally. You know this is a safe space. You know you can definitely not get slurs hailed at you, all that kind of stuff. This is just a community of people who love the gays. Like so many of the online communities that are trying to be like, oh, queers for Palestine, more like chickens for KFC, are people who actively, in their own country, hate gay people. Republicans who just fucking hate gay people, and then at the same time they're like, oh, all these silly losers, all these like LGBTQ plus people saying like end genocide bad, apparently apartheid is bad no matter who does it. Yeah, well, you try doing that in Gaza, we'll see how they treat you. How do you treat me here? How do you treat me in America? How do you treat me in red states? How do you treat me in Canada if I go to Alberta and they're trying to like enact some of the most draconian fucking anti-LGBTQ plus laws directly targeting, once again, trans people? Yeah, it turns out that but what if you were gay and Hamas, it was around crowd, are also kind of shitty towards gay people.
Moderate their viewpoint in an effort to become more accepted by Western culture and bring in Western capital into the country.
Sure.
Ultimately, if they did become a queer safe haven, for example, overnight, there's still plenty of issues in Saudi society in terms of utilizing slave labor, in terms of death and destruction that befalls like indigenous populations in areas where they want to do building projects. And beyond that, there is the whole genocide in Yemen. A lot of these things can be solved inevitably, and there were some initiative from China that brought Iran and Saudi Arabia to the table to stop the destruction of Yemen, for example. That was relatively successful pre-October 7.
I don't think that it's fair to say that, like, of course, like all people that are Arabs, and also like really it's not about being an Arab. It's about having a religious theocracy that enables you to dehumanize other people.
Yeah,
because you want to talk about
don't have a theocracy,
dehumanization.
by the way, just so you understand. Like they don't have anything.
Also, it's just so rich that he would say something like that, considering like the whole stemming for this debate was that clip of him going viral where he is just dehumanizing Palestinians, saying twice that they're from an inferior culture. They're an inferior culture that in their own mandate calls for genocide, so anything that happens to them is justified. They might not have wealth, power, weaponry, all that kind of stuff. Mostly it's just these what are deemed to be extremist resistance groups that have to do what they can to try and battle monstrous empires with all the weight of the US military behind them. But they're inferior. And because they're inferior, they deserve what's coming to them.
Like a lot of those other Gulf states are in alignment with the United States of America and are allowed to operate in whichever ways they see fit, including but not limited to helping Israel, right? They get F-16s and fleets of American planes, and they get security contracts for their consistent maintenance of American interests in the region.
Do you think I support that?
I don't. I'm not even saying if you
I-
support it or
so-
not. I'm
so
simply
here's the
stating that
thing.
like
go ahead.
monopolizing an entire region of people and assuming that they all are operating on the same boundaries is incorrect.
Why isn't he going hard? Because like every single person right now, I think on some degree or another, especially if you're a leftist or you're just a humanist, if you're a human with empathy and you're in the West, you feel utterly hopeless. And like every day you're trying to make a calculation. What is the best way that I can try and move towards ending the suffering of, say, Palestinians in that region who are just getting burnt alive in their tents, right? And so what's going to benefit to go on here and be like, Asmongold, like talking about him the way I was just talking about him, right? Like you are literally 47 cockroaches in a trench coat. You live in squalor and filth. Who are you to call anyone inferior when you can't even take care of yourself, despite the millions and millions of dollars and assets that you have at your disposal? You live in squalid filth. You are disgusting. There's blood on your walls. Clean up your room, clean up your house before you try to call out other people, right? Then obviously the response is going to be like, oh, well, fuck you, you bougie fucking communist. Living off the backs of all these people who love you because you're so hot, but you don't actually care about any of these issues. You're just a multimillionaire yourself, constantly just trying to pretend like you care about these kind of things. And that would be it, right? It wouldn't be like, hey, by the way, to the, I don't know, 20,000, 40,000 Asmongold watchers right now who are witnessing this, are any of them suddenly thinking maybe it's bad to just think of Palestinians as subhuman vermin worthy of extermination? Maybe that is not the way forward, right? Like that, I think in Hasan's calculation is going to be way more valuable if I can convince either slightly, ever so slightly, Asmongold to be less of a wretch and some of his fans to suddenly not think it's okay to just support the military of the US in all its ventures and the military of Israel and anything it does, right?
A conflation of conservatism and reactionary ideals with members of an entire.
Do you think Hasan can convince them? I think Hasan is making the calculation that if Asmongold becomes 1% less shit, then there's a net benefit to that. And if Asmongold becomes 1% less shit, then his audience becomes 1% less shit. Because his audience is not going to listen to Hasan, it's going to listen to Asmongold and everything that he says every day when they're like, hey, by the way, isn't it kind of fucked up what's happening? And then having Asmongold be like, I'm sorry, but if you look at their charter, they call for genocide, they're subhuman, they're inferior, everything that comes to them is justified. If the next time he talks about this, he's like, well, I'm not in any way, shape, or form a fan of Hamas. I think they're terrorists and they're evil. I also think it's not really fair for kids to be killed because they didn't vote for Hamas. Like that, yeah, there's a net benefit to that if he becomes 1% less shit.
Overlap between Christianity and Islam, right?
Okay.
Especially in terms of like, laws, etc., and things to believe. And I think that I would view a Christian, like one of these like super like religious zealot Christian people, I would view them trying to push that on other people as the same type of basically inferior culture. I think that it is inferior. That's why we fought for years and years and years to get rid of it.
Okay, so yeah, obviously chattel slavery was justified by Christianity, and chattel slavery was abolished with liberation theology, which is also Christianity. So Christianity, religion, played a formative role in both sides of chattel slavery, both in the justification and maintenance of it, but also played a formative role in the abolition of it, right?
That's true,
So-
but I want to make
so-
sure that we're drawing a distinction real quick between following a religion and then having a government that is a religious theocracy
Yeah.
that bases its laws off of that religion. I think that most people that are of any religion just want to be able to get along.
Okay.
I think that's very much true.
So,
But the problem is that if you have a government that is based off of that religion, I can't think of a single government that's based off of a religion that isn't bad.
well, I mean, Americans are the American Republican Party is desperately trying to bring that back as best as they can, but I
They're
think
trying to
you-
make them. They've made it legal to teach that. It's mandatory now to teach the Bible in Oklahoma.
Yes. So
You saw that. Yeah.
yeah, I did. So you understand that those are people, some of which are genuine like religious zealots, and others who are simply utilizing religion as a galvanizing factor to be like, see, like
Oh, I think
people
that
have
we know
different why
Yeah.
they advocate for certain things.
that
Yeah.
people use really that type of behavior.
Great. Herein lies in the Muslim, and there are, you know, it is.
It is.
I think it might.
6 billion now. That's
And
the
yes,
number.
I'm Turkish. I come from a country that is nowhere near as fundamentalist. It's supposed to be secular.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Recep Tayyip Erdogan is very similar to Donald Trump in terms of like, in terms of how he utilized Islam to make himself, to give himself a more prominent role in Turkish society. Was able to both bastardize religion and also simultaneously use it for social repression, social oppression, and cultural repression in general. So I personally understand like I've withstood the direct consequences of that, of a society being redesigned. And perhaps that is the reason why I know that there's a difference between simply monolithizing an entire religion versus people who are championing religion, Islam in this case, to meet their own authoritarian governance demands. And that's simply what it is. A lot of people don't like the way that their government operates. There are gay Muslims, there are queer Muslims, there are queer trans people. They have unfortunately not had any breathing room to be able to advocate for civil rights in many parts of this region, because they have been consistently pushed back against, and also don't have any fucking time or space to be able to do such a thing when they're under direct occupation. That's the issue.
But
And if
would
the-
you come to the same conclusion that basing decisions off of that religion and making laws based off of that religion is a bad thing?
Yeah, of course. I don't. What do you mean?
Okay.
I don't. I don't
okay,
agree in
so-
theocracy at all.
Awesome. And so, but wouldn't that mean that it would be inferior?
No, I wouldn't
I-
say. I wouldn't say that any
Okay.
culture is inferior to one another. I would, however, say
way.
that. I would, however,
Come on,
say that,
man.
especially as it pertains to Palestinians, the reason why I
No
don't think it's
way.
inferior over the one another is that inferiority.
Yeah, but also it's because this shit is so juvenile. Like, this is the kind of stuff that you think about when you're in high school, and like hopefully you go beyond it. Also, just seeing the world through the lens, the kind of Ezra Klein, the jank from TYT kind of thing, where it's just like, these are just a bunch of people killing each other over whose god is better, whose imaginary man in the sky is more powerful. And it's like, at this point, I think we can pretty much like recognize that yes, there are religious theocracies, and yes, we should oppose anyone trying to implement a set of standards and rules based entirely on a guidebook that was written a very, very long time ago, before we had evidence of, say, the germ theory of disease. I agree with you. Like, I've read all the atheist writers. I've read the Richard Dawkins. I've read the Christopher Hitchens. I've even read the Sam Harrises of the world. I understand the argument coming from a lot of this, but to think that like a lot of the basis for so many of these conflicts is simply still rooted in nothing other than one person's understanding of the Quran versus one person's understanding of the Bible versus one person's understanding of the Torah, that kind of stuff. It's like there's also a lot more to be said about the U.S. empire, about the military-industrial complex, about investment firms that control and manipulate a lot of the world's wealth and invest them heavily into these industries, about politicians who they themselves may have investments within those very same companies. A lot of that plays, I'd say, a lot larger role than simply two nations are going to war over whose imaginary god is better, and that's still happening to this day. There is, of course, religious theocracies. Like, no one is trying to discount or deny that, but to then also say that, like, well, do you not feel like they're inferior, that they're kind of the garbage society? Do you not think that? Because they believe in the imaginary man in the sky. And I like that Hasan's trying to point out that it's like there's a lot of right-wing Christian nationalists in the Republican Party who are trying to revert the United States, convert the United States into a religious theocracy, and say that the one, like, what does Marjorie Taylor Greene say out loud all the time? You know, it's like, the only man and the only laws I believe in are the ones created by God in the Bible. Only person I believe in is Jesus. Only person who can bring us truth is Donald Trump, who's Jesus number 3. You know, all that kind of shit. It's like, well, yeah, they're trying to convert the United States into a religious theocracy. That's bad. It is a bad thing. But even if they did that successfully, I wouldn't then try to be like, well, the United States is simply an inferior culture and they need to be invaded. Now, I don't know how Canada is ever going to pull this off, but if nothing else, we should be building a large wall to protect us from that inferior culture that's just south of the border to us. The same problem is happening within Canada. There are people who are trying. Hasan Piker was banned on Twitch temporarily, but was banned on Twitch for saying the C word. You know, for referencing white people using the derogatory slur of the C word. And myself and a lot of other people were just kind of like aghast at this becoming a thing where we have now kind of equated all slurs. But I guess from a media standpoint, from, especially like a media empire standpoint, if you have a publishing house like Twitch is for digital streaming services, you try to use blanket kind of rules for everybody. Still doesn't apply to, dehumanizing language towards people who may have disabilities. You can still use the R slur all you want. You could have a stream where all you do is just scream the R slur for fucking 5 hours straight, and apparently that's not worthy of a ban. But saying the C word to refer to white people is why I have to say the C word instead of saying it out loud. Meanwhile, Asmongold yesterday was effectively stating that Palestinians are worthy of genocide because they are from an inferior culture. Again, the kind of stuff that you feel might be relegated to, Stormfront corners or Tucker Carlson's or stuff like that. I'd say less than like, hey, by the way, Asmongold is directly parroting the kind of things that like Tucker Carlson parrots. We should be looking towards the fact that Asmongold, as a kind of like center-right normie, is parroting what is very, very normalized, which is the dehumanization of Palestinians, especially amongst Americans. Post, like, 9/11, as much as you want to say that you were perhaps progressive or not a racist, it was still very, very normalized to be completely dehumanizing towards, again, Muslims, Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, and referring to all of them as potential terrorists. Ben Shapiro was putting out videos around that time. The myth of the radical Muslim minority, talking about how the majority of Muslims are actually extremists, and that's quite a thing to say about billions of human beings, but like basically painting them as these religious zealots that are just so devout to everything that they read in the Quran, that they enact mass acts of terrorism and violence against otherwise good American citizens, and that extremist rhetoric was just as prevalent in Canada. Unfortunately, a lot of people who happen to have brown skin, regardless of whether or not they were Muslim, they could have been Hindu, they could have been Sikh, they would still be targeted directly by this kind of vile racism, and it was extremely normalized, prevalent in most aspects of society. You wouldn't get like kicked out of a dinner conversation if you started talking about how, well, them Muslims and them Arabs, they certainly do like blowing up cars, don't they? Like that was just considered to be normal fucking, that person's not an extreme racist. He's simply talking about what everyone is concerned about and feeling and shit like that. So Asmongold is still kind of like stuck in that post 9/11 era. And obviously the racism that he's putting on display here, it is vile. It should be called out. It shouldn't be normalized. It should be immediately identified for what it is. This is white supremacist rhetoric. If you were talking about how countries that are undergoing a genocide apparently are justified in that genocide because they come from inferior cultures, yes, these are 100% white supremacist talking points. Whether or not he sees it that way, whether or not he identifies it as that way, whether or not his thousands upon thousands of people watching live see it as that way, that is what it is. I have a quote from the clip.
If you want to consider a genocide as a systematic killing of a group of people, they have genocide built into Sharia law right now. So no, I'm not going to cry a fucking river when people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided. I don't give a fuck. They're terrible people. It's not even a question. It's crazy that people don't see it that way. They'd be doing the same thing. And how much did they kill? As many as they can. They're not able to kill as many people as Israel because they don't have as many bombs and as many weapons. But if they did, they'd be doing the same thing. That's it. Just takes enough. That's right. These people are not your allies. They are not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture that is horrible. It kills people for their identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture in all ways.
So, like, you hear this, and you got to understand, though, that he is repeating a lot of talking points that are basically being regurgitated by a lot of the pro-Israeli sentiments as well, right? The dehumanization of Palestinians is necessary to kind of justify the genocide, and basically we keep getting the same thing, especially, like, you know, the pink washing of it all, because he started bringing this up when he debated Hasan about, like, gay people, trans people, LGBTQ plus people, asexual people, etc., that they would be effectively killed if they were in Palestine. Same thing that Bill Maher is pushing right now. Like, he actually basically eloquated a murder fantasy of Chapel Roan because she had the audacity to say that there are problems with the Democrats, and that while she is going to be voting for Kamala, and she says fuck Trump, she's also saying that she cannot support genocide, and so she cannot endorse that political party or tell everyone to go vote for them, because effectively that is a red line for her, as it is for a lot of people. And that was enough for, you know, Bill Maher to do an entire segment where he's like, well, you know, you would be thrown off a roof the second you arrive in Gaza. And all of that shit, again, is utterly absurd, because, yeah, you'd probably die if you arrived in Gaza, because Israel would kill you. They would starve you, and they would bomb you to death. So yeah, I would die if I went to Gaza. It wouldn't be for being bisexual. It would simply be for existing in Gaza right now, as Israel is just fucking carpet bombing everyone who lives there. So he releases a statement. He ends up debating with Hasan for a couple hours, and it was once again Hasan showing just supreme patience, you know, doing that thing where it's like, I have an opportunity now to, I guess, reach out to the 40,000 people who are watching Asmongold live and, you know, try and get a percentage of them to actually humanize Palestinians and actually recognize them to be human beings worthy of existing just like anyone else, even if Asmongold is effectively trying to dehumanize them like this. And that resulted in him getting banned today. Twitch streamer Asmongold banned after racist rant about Palestinians. The streamer said Muslims come from an inferior culture. Twitch streamer and famous YouTuber Zach Asmongold Hoyt has had his Zach account banned after a recent rant about Muslims and Palestinians killed in Gaza. By the way, shout out to Kotaku for properly reporting on this. Whereas Deserksto or whatever that fucking trash heap is, were like racist in quotation marks. Their headline actually has racist in quotation marks. Like Asmongold banned after racist rant. He went to social media to say, quote, "My bad. My bad, y'all. Yeah, sorry. Didn't know that so many people would get offended by the words I said about, you know, Muslims being inferior and coming from inferior cultures and justifying their genocide as a result of them being inferior. My bad. Whoopsies. Whoopsie." Following an online backlash. Looking back on it, I was way too much of an asshole about the Palestine thing. His other Twitch channel, Asmongold, remains up. In addition to playing games, Hoyt frequently live streams extended chat sessions where he comments on other people's YouTube videos or whatever topics are gaining traction on his dedicated subreddit. In the midst of a recent live stream, he began talking about Israel's war on Gaza, which the Gaza Health Ministry says has killed over 40,000 Palestinians since it began just over a year ago. Quote, if you want to consider genocide as a systematic killing of a group of people, they have genocide built into Sharia law right now, so no, I'm not going to cry a fucking river when people who have genocide that's baked into their laws are getting genocided. I don't give a fuck, they're terrible people. It's not even a question. It's crazy. People don't see it that way. They'd be doing the same thing. These people are not your allies. They're not the same as us. They come from an inferior culture that is horrible. It kills people for their identity, and it is directly antithetical to everything Western values stand for, and it is an inferior culture of all ways. This, by the way, is also fucked knowing that it's Western values that are basically enacting this genocide. Like, right now, there's no other country that is killing children at a higher rate than Israel is doing, you know, by any metric or measure. That, to me, if that is Western values, then fuck Western values. There's no other country that is doing a monstrously mass forced starvation on another nation where they're depriving them of all water, of all food, of all medical supplies, and while they are forcibly starving them, they're burning them alive in tents as they try to move from location to location, burning precious calories, unable to escape a genocide. They are being genocided within the genocide as that is actively happening. Again, if this is Western values are profoundly and fundamentally fucked. The entire idea of a moral order, of a Western moral order, a necessary moral order, has completely evaporated and is evaporated for a lot of people as well who may have previously thought that, like, well, I don't agree with everything the United States has done. I know that the CIA is certainly fucked over, maybe some people in the global south, and that it's not all good. I do think ultimately when it comes down to it, that it is a force for good in the world, and that it is effectively utilizing its power as the most powerful country on the planet, the empire, if you will, to again maintain a lot of democracy and order and try and spread it. Like, fool me 50 times, you know, shame on you. It's one of those things for people who grew up during the Iraq War should have noticed that this entire song and dance, this whole sales pitch is, yes, a monstrously huge lie to justify war crimes. How do you justify war crimes? How do you justify invading nations that hadn't directly attacked the United States? Well, you dehumanize them. You dehumanize them, and it also helps if you pick a baddie, right? Like, no one is ever going to defend Saddam Hussein and the horrifying things that he himself has done. But again, does that warrant, again, invading a sovereign nation and then completely destabilizing it and allowing all of these terrorist factions and groups to, like, take power under that power vacuum and effectively kill hundreds of thousands of civilians along the way in order to spread democracy and freedom and then pull out? Again, it's kind of like, well, you went there, you spread democracy and freedom, and then there was that one election where all those Americans held up, you know, the black vote finger, and then they're like, yeah, we did it, we spread democracy, we everything's good now. And how is it now? Everything worked out, you know, trillions of dollars later. The comments were immediately condemned by various Twitch users, streamers, and others. Many pointed to the Amazon-owned platform's terms of service and community guidelines, which prohibit speech that reinforces negative stereotypes about or tries to dehumanize protective groups. Some take Twitch, calling for Hoyt to be banned, which the platform has now done, for his 1.9 million follower Zakarar channel. Leftist streamer Hasan Piker, who had been an outspoken advocate for the Palestinian rights for years, invited Hoyt onto his own channel to rebuke his comments and push back on the racist rhetoric. Hoyt later backed off from his original remarks, but stopped short of saying he was wrong. Looking back on it, I was way too much of an asshole about the Palestinian thing, he boasts on Next. My bad. Of course, no one deserves to have their life destroyed, even if they do things or have views I find regressive. You guys deserve more than me saying stupid shit about that. I'll do better. Yeah, no shit. This is why the whole, like, you know, gays for Palestine is like chickens for KFC is so abhorrent, because it's like, first off, you're not gay. A lot of the people who are using this kind of rhetoric are not themselves gay, right? It's a lot of straight people trying to utilize, again, gay people in the middle of this to try and justify their own bigotry. No, I'm not a racist. I'm not dehumanizing Muslims and Palestinians and all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, I'm worried about the treatment of gay people there. Well, then fucking worry about the treatment of gay people in America, because they're not being treated universally really well. If you're worried about this, how many times has Asmongold been at the forefront of being an ally standing on behalf of LGBTQ plus rights, between the Nick Merck stuff, between the Dr. Disrespect stuff, between the consistent targeting of queer folk within the gaming community? Is Asmongold at the front lines? Is he being a strong-ass ally, constantly being like, you guys shouldn't be doing this. This is very dehumanizing language. You shouldn't be saying this, okay? At the end of the day, they are humans. They have human rights. They deserve the same rights as everyone else. Or is he just part of the fodder? Is he just reinforcing all this shit? Same thing towards his treatment of women and all the sexism that is prevalent within the gaming community and all that kind of stuff. If he's like, well, yeah, but Palestinians are really bad towards women's rights. How many videos do you have where you are directly reinforcing all of this fucking vile bullshit, and then afterwards being like, well, yeah, they're really ruining video games because, yeah, they put a black woman as the protagonist, all of this woke DEI shit, we're fucking sick of it, all of this stuff sucks. Well, yeah, if you are not an outspoken advocate at home, in what world are you suddenly trying to judge and justify the complete dehumanization of another group who are undergoing a fucking genocide by saying you're doing it on behalf of the gays? Well, no, I care about the gays for the first time, actually. Yeah, and I care about them in this regard, in that I think the gays are treated poorly in Palestine, and because of that, it's justifiable to basically wipe them off the face of the earth. Oh, is that what's happening? Oh, shit. Okay, well, my bad. My bad. I'll do better. My bad. I didn't know things were quite that intense. So, yep, here we are. Some of his fans immediately criticized the about face as caving to the backlash, the woke mob. You listen to the woke mafia, god damn it. While others said it didn't go nearly far enough. This is coming from a fan who's been frequently watching you for over a decade, wrote one person. This wasn't just, oh shit, my bad. You got to apologize properly. Saying an entire culture and ethnicity is inferior is literally Nazism and racism. It's disgusting. Twitch did not immediately respond for a request for comment, and so we're still not 100% completely clear as to what's happening. Yeah. This person states, I am no longer going to be affiliated with Star Forge PCs in any capacity because Asmongold is one of the owners. Fuck this toothless idiot. Straight up Islamophobic hate speech because this dumb asshole doesn't want to play WoW anymore and just wants chatting money. Fuck that. So, yeah, I mean, it's gross. Meanwhile, in terms of gamers and the right, I don't know if you saw, but Grum says, I'm voting Trump. And Trump has made an announcement that he's going to be banning video games.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for trouble.
Is it 1996? What the fuck is going on? I thought at this point, this is similar. If I was a Republican, if I was like a MAGA, I would be saying the same shit that I'm saying right now about the Democrats, in that, like, how the fuck are they fucking this shit up so badly? Did no one in like the inner circle of the entire, like, you know, RNC, like, do a single poll, the data point, recognize the historical context of trying to like ban violent video games, how much success it has? Matt Walsh tried it. The gamers were furious. Like, at least Steve Bannon recognized we cannot fight the gamer. We must align with the gamer. We must tell the gamer that effectively the Pepe memes are going to be necessary to get Trump elected from all the feminists. Yes, we must use the gamers against the feminists to get the right in power. And that was a direct contrast to what Milo was writing about for Breitbart right before the whole Gamergate shit started. Before that, Milo was doing the same thing Trump's doing right now, talking about how violent video games are a scourge. This used to be the Democrat shit, by the way. This used to be the thing that Democrats would push and be like, violent video games are making the kids violent and it's causing school shootings, and Mortal Kombat has fatalities, and Doom has a shotgun, and we need to stop these games. Have you heard about this Night Trap game? Apparently it's like a snuff film that you get to interact with. It's an actual snuff film, a video game with sex, hardcore nudity, dongs flying all over the place, and alien vampires and capturing women, and we have to stop this scourge. And it turned out like, okay, so these are monstrously huge industries, billions and billions and billions of dollars. So they're going to spend a whole bunch of money to look into this, to be able to provide data to show, hey, is there a correlation between violence in video games, violence in media, and violence in teenagers and boys specifically? Are they acting out violence more because the video games are more violent, or because the movies were more violent, or any of that? Turns out no, it's all bullshit. And if anything, video games seem to pacify people. And there's not to say any negative consequences from video games. Video game addiction is very, very real. Video game addiction is something that has to be addressed and has to be acknowledged for what it is. And then, like, I'm not saying that video games are flawless just because I love video games. They're one of my favorite forms of media. But the idea of attacking video games because of their violence, it's so done. It's so done, but he's still doing it. Like, it's like trying to resurrect this shit, going after capital G gamers.
Youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. We must stop.
Good luck. That's all I'm going to say. No politician has effectively come out the other end of this with a good reputation. Even the people who succeeded in implementing measures such as we need a rating system, fine, get a rating system. Adults should be able to consume adult media. All right. If it's that you want to protect them kids, it's not get rid of the entirety of violent films or violent video games or sexual characters or sexual movies or any of that kind of stuff. Just make movies for adults and make movies for kids and make video games for adults and make video games for kids. And there you go.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincell, Words Greenwood. With additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.